Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing George R.R. Martin's novel Fevre Dream, talk real briefly about the author, give a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. George R.R. Martin is best known for his A Song of Ice and Fire series that was later made into Game of Thrones, the really famous HBO show. He wrote this book back in 1978, I believe, Fevre Dream, which is about a steamboat ship captain who gets drawn into a war between two rival factions of vampires. And what is interesting about it is there are clearly a lot of historical details that George researched for this book. Most of the book takes place on the Mississippi River, going back and forth between St. Louis and New Orleans. And so it's very, I don't know how historically accurate it is, but it's clear that he put a lot of research and time into making that period feel real. I think that usually when you have vampire novels, a lot of times you'll see them in kind of the classical sense of like a Dracula. And I do think it takes a lot of skill and effort to kind of draw that out and to change the setting and to still make vampires work. I think he does that here, and I think he has a unique take on the vampire legend and myth that works really, really well with this novel. I don't think he's ever returned to this world. I think this is kind of a single one and done, but I think there's a lot of really interesting ideas that he uses in the book, and the vampire kind of myth works really well for this time period and what he's trying to do here. I think the end of the book, he has an epilogue that I think is really beautifully written, and I think ends the book at kind of like a pitch perfect note. So I really appreciated that. I think if I had some criticisms of the book, they're pretty minor, but the first part of the book kind of moves relatively slow, and you're not quite sure exactly what is going on or who the characters are and what the overall plot of the book is till probably about somewhere between a quarter and a half of the book gets done before you really kind of start seeing where the book is going. So it does take some time for you to kind of get to where it's going. I think a lot of that is atmosphere that he's building, but I do think that, for me at least, I wish he had kind of gotten to the main gist of the plot a little bit faster. There's also a lot of secondary characters in the book, and some of the secondary vampire characters kind of are hard to distinguish. So there's some minor characters that are a little bit difficult to keep track of. And the book does drag a little bit towards the end. I found myself kind of wishing it had been a little bit shorter towards the end. So the third act may be a little bit longer than I would have liked. Overall, I did enjoy it. I think there's some interesting ideas in it. I think it could have been a little bit tighter of a book. But I do think if you're someone who is interested in reading about vampires and want to take the kind of vampire legends out of the normal like Transylvania, Dracula's Castle thing, I think this is interesting. I will say the book is set in the pre-Civil War, and so America, and so it's very much, George doesn't shy away from language and stuff that we don't necessarily use today. So if that bothers you, there's also, it is a fairly gory book, and there's one scene in particular where there's a child in peril. I don't want to spoil it, but if you're sensitive to those things, you may not want to take a read. But that's Fevre Dream by George R.R. Martin. Next time I'll be listening to a book on audiobook called Writing Tools. So that'll be my next review. Until next time, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will have my Twitter handle in the link below. Until next time, bye.